killed him.
You can't kill the boogeyman.
Get in there, come on, Tommy. Now lock the door.
Hey there kids, welcome back. David from Atomic Candy, and I am open by chance, and what I am open with today is Michael Myers from MEZCO 1/12 collective figure for Halloween, which was released in October of 2018. So I've just got my hands on it here, and we are going to go ahead and open this up and take a look at Mike Myers. You see he's still sealed in the bag. And of course I am a big fan of the MEZCO 1/12 collective figures. I have several of them that I've done reviews on. So I'm going to go ahead and get this started. And they always come sealed in a bag like this, which is a good idea. And those of you who have ever had a package left on the porch, you know why. Porch or doorstep, and it rains because they don't care. And you end up with a soaking wet product, but not with these. And of course there is another sleeve. There is another plastic sleeve over the top of the box. I'm not going to pull it all the way off because there is another sleeve on the inside. Now they've done something a little different with this one. Mine is boxed differently than others that I have, because you can see that he's already revealed here. Usually, and that's the plastic that's supposed to cover this bit, usually there is a hinged box that's clasped on the sides with magnets, but this doesn't have that, and I'm kind of surprised actually that they did this way. I'll put these side by side and go ahead and rotate that, and now there's an image on the back of this one of what looks like a locust, the face of a locust or a grasshopper. That's interesting. And then all the Michael Myers accessories and information on the back here to show you what's in the package. Usually the inner box has the same image as the back of the box, and then there's a flap that contains artwork on the inside of the flap, and they've done completely away with that. I wonder if that's how they're going to start packaging these now, since this is a very new figure. That's interesting. So we'll go ahead and we'll get to unboxing this, and I'll show you again how I do that. Very simply, take any tool, a knife will do, insert it into the bottom of the flap, give it a turn, and you see it pops right up. And that way you can open the flap without any creases or bending or other issues. And now we can go ahead and slide the trays out that contain the Michael Myers figure. And there's some paperwork in here. I have not gotten paperwork in any of the other boxes before. Instructions for the pumpkin battery, because the pumpkin lights up. It tells you how to do that. Instructions for the head. Product guidelines. These are not toys and not meant for children. Huh. Care and consideration should be exercised when handling. I guess because there's been so many complaints rather about damage, because I do hear a lot of people, they break ankles, they break the wrist joints when they're trying to force hands and stuff. It's sort of a disclaimer for liability, warning you, hey, you know, you need to be careful with these. I have not gotten paperwork inside of one of these before. So that's two things that are very different. Now here's our Mike Myers inside the tray, based on the first film, which was released, I believe, October 25th, 1978, way back in 1978, a year after Star Wars, starring Jamie Lee Curtis and Donald Pleasence. Of course, that was Jamie Lee Curtis's first on-screen appearance. Pull the other tray out here. for which she was paid $8,000. There's the ghost. Pumpkin batteries. The gripping arm for holding him up, and the 1/12 collective Ziploc bag. A lot of people really like that bag. Then we have the Judith Myers headstone, 6 hands, 2 kitchen knives, the pumpkin, which is supposed to light up, and then Myers himself with the stand in the background, the platform in the background. Donald Pleasance was the big name for that movie. He was paid $20,000, so that's how he was the big star, right? Peter Cushing, who played Grand Moff Tarkin in Star Wars, and Christopher Lee both turned that role down to be the psychiatrist because their agents said that $20,000 wasn't enough money. These are already falling out. I try not to tip the tray too much because the pieces will fall out, and I've actually had that happen on a couple of unboxing videos before, but I have a blanket on the floor for if anything falls it won't get damaged. And I am primarily an in-the-box collector, but since these are made in a way that they can be taken out, displayed, and repackaged, I don't feel bad about opening these, so I will be taking this out and doing a more extensive review. Get the headstone is inside of a foam container there. So we're going to go ahead and pull that apart and stand him up and take a good look at him. And here we go. Here is our Michael Myers out of the box with all of his accessories. And as I was saying, you know, Donald Pleasance played Dr. Loomis, Samuel Loomis, and he took the role for $20,000. And he was the big name for the film. Donald Pleasance was a very good actor, but he was up and down in his acting career. He had a lot of questionable parts as well as a lot of really exceptional parts. For example, he was in Jesus of Nazareth, but then he's done films that have been featured on Mystery Science Theater. They were so bad. So he did some really crappy B films in his career. So this was a good, almost a swan song for Donald Pleasance to bring him back, even though it didn't pay much. But it wasn't enough for Peter Cushing or Christopher Lee. Christopher Lee said in an interview years later that he regrets that he didn't take the part because of how much attention the first 2 films drew. Because the first 2 films are very different from the sequels. Let's take a close-up on some of those accessories. Here's a set of gripping hands for holding the knives. And you notice on all the hands, the fingernails are very dirty. It's a set of hands with the fingers out, and another set of kind of grabby hands, like he's reaching for someone. See how dirty they made the nails? A couple of butcher knives. One bloody and one not bloody. And I would be careful with these. These are very thin. They are sharp at a point too, but they are very thin, so I would not want you to force it into his hand and break one. That's something to consider. Here's your batteries for the pumpkin. And then there is the hood, because it is a hood. This is not just a sheet that they throw over him. If you look in here, there's a neck joint, so this actually replaces his head, and there is a head inside. And it will take a close-up on here. There's glasses just like in the film, and if you look inside, there is actually depth to this. So that there's plastic over for glass, and then you can see the eyes set deep inside there. So they put a lot of effort into this ghost disguise. That's pretty decent. I appreciate that. The arm for posing, in case you want to make Michael leaping through the air, which never happened in the film, but your imagination is your imagination. The 1/12 collective Ziploc bag, which collectors rave over this bag. It's a Ziploc bag, guys. But I guess it makes it easier for just keeping the accessories near the figure if you don't want to keep going back and forth to the box if you change your posing a lot. Here's the pumpkin, which I guess that part comes out. Yeah, that part comes out, and the batteries go inside there. So we'll leave that open because I'm going to go ahead and put that together for when I put him into some posing. And then the headstone, which is actually polystone, and this is the reason why it was inside of a little foam container by itself. It's heavy, it's polystone, it's made to feel like it's actually made out of stone. So good detailing on this, although it doesn't have a way to stand it. It'll stand on its own, obviously, but it doesn't have anything that you can insert it in to make sure it stays up. But that's film accurate because he just kind of stole the headstone and leaned it up in the house. And of course his stand, and he's on the foot peg right now, but he wasn't very cooperative with the foot peg, and that's a well-known problem with some of these, that the foot pegs don't fit very well. He did go on without too much problem, but sometimes they don't fit at all. And we're going to take him off here and look at his articulation. And speaking of salaries, by the way, John Carpenter, which this is the film that really jumped off his career, was paid $10,000. $10,000 for writing the film, for directing the film, and for doing the musical score. Take a look at the mask. The mask, by the way, is a William Shatner mask. It's a William Shatner mask that they used, and they just kind of bleached it out to make it completely pale. But yeah, that's Kirk. And if you look here, just like with the ghost head, his eyes are set down in the mask. It's a very good detail, the way that they did that. I like that. And John Carpenter's girlfriend, Deborah Hill, was the producer. And she wrote all of the female speaking parts. Really good head articulation on this one. I would imagine so, since the head pops off. He's got a shirt on underneath, and it looks like it's not an ascot. And that's something that I brought up before, is very often it's just like a piece of shirt, and then they stitch a costume up over it. It looks like he actually has a shirt, or at least like an A shirt, you know, a wife beater underneath, maybe. So there's no gaps where you can see skin underneath that. The typical jumpsuit. I believe his collar was up in the film, if I remember correctly, but his is down right now. I'm not worried about it. Shoulder articulation is very tight, and it could be because of the extra shirt. I'm not sure, but that is very tight to the point where I'm worried about damaging it. Elbow articulation is very tight as well. Look at this. I'm turning it very slowly because I can feel how tight it is. I don't want to harm it. But yeah, that's surprisingly tight. I have not run into that with any other 1/12 figure before, where it almost doesn't want to move. You can hear it popping into position. See? That's how tight that is. And I wonder if it's because of the shoulder platform for the other head, because the other head has like a complete, see how it fits over? I wonder if that's something they did to the figure to make that fit better, and it's harboring some of the articulation. Standard wrist articulation, and I'll be changing out the hands in a minute. Limited waist movement. hip movement. There's a little restriction in the hip movement as well. And that could be because it's a jumpsuit. And of course the clothing does not come off. This is permanently attached. Knees and ankles and pivot feel good. He's wearing old Vietnam style combat boots. That articulation is pretty good. There's the holes for the foot pegs. They are a little larger than normal, but that's a good thing. You know, the first two Halloween films were written to go together. Kind of like Superman, Christopher Reeve's Superman. Superman 1 and 2 were really written as one film and they split it up. And then they did the same thing with Halloween. Halloween 1 and 2 were written as a two-parter. And that was supposed to be it. That was supposed to end because Michael dies at the end of part 2. He dies at the end. Donald Pleasance manages to kill him. Then there was a Halloween 3 that had nothing to do with the movie. It had nothing to do with Michael Myers anyways, except that there is an Easter egg in the film where you see Myers in that film. Watch the film and see if you can find him. But they were going to get away from Michael Myers and try to do something different every year, but people were like, where the hell's Michael Myers? What is this? And so they brought him back again and again and again, and each film was worse than the next because that just doesn't work. Same as Superman. Superman 1 and 2 are good. 3 and 4 are hard to watch. So let's go ahead and pose him and see how he looks. And here we go. Michael Myers in an action pose, leaping through the air with both of his butcher knives at Brock Lesnar as punishment for having one of the worst body tattoos in professional wrestling. And I got the pumpkin going. You can see it there, and I'll cut the lights so that you can get a better look at that. It's just sort of a flickering pumpkin effect. And the pumpkin is actually one of the most difficult parts to work with. And I'll explain that as I go along here. First of all, in order to open the battery door, you're going to need a precision tool. You're going to need a very, very small screwdriver like the kind that's used for eyeglasses. If you don't have that and you get this figure, you probably need to go to the dollar store and pick up an eyeglass kit so that you can have a screwdriver small enough to get that pumpkin open. See, and I left the screw out for when I put this back together, and if I can get it in focus, I mean, that's basically the screw. You can see the problem. I left it out so I could show you. And then getting those two little batteries in, because it's set deep in the door. Let me open the top of the pumpkin back up and show you inside here. That's very deep in there, so articulating, getting your fingers in there and pressing down the spring and getting both batteries in, it's not that simple. So there's a couple of things to consider. Now what I did to get the batteries in was I dropped the first one in. The first one will go in easy. Then I took like a kitchen knife and pressed it down hard on the spring and slid the other battery down the side of the blade so that it fell into place, and then pulled the blade out from between the two of them so that I didn't have to try to get in there and jam my fingers in there and wrestle with the spring and everything, because then it wouldn't receive it. It just wasn't going to. A lot of difficulty getting his arms into position. As I pointed out earlier, they are very tight. Putting the knives into the gripping hands was not a problem because the fingers are very rubbery. So that was not too much of an issue. Halloween, the original 1 and 2, I would consider that classic horror, a classic horror film. And it was well done, which is more that can be said for a lot of horror films, even the current one. I know that Halloween has just been re-released again. Rob Zombie did one, which I didn't care for because of the excessive amount of foul language. I don't like that too much. And the fact that they killed Danny Trejo. I was like, what'd you kill Danny Trejo for? I was ready to walk out after they killed Danny Trejo. Because it just wasn't necessary. It just wasn't necessary. Because it took all emotion away from Mike Myers. And in the first film, he had some. You have to look for it, but you can find it. But it just turned him into a robot when he killed Danny Trejo. And the new film, I'm hearing, I know it did really well at the box office opening day, but I'm hearing from people that it's really just gore porn, and there's practically no story to it, and that they're disappointed for that reason. I haven't seen it yet myself, so I'm not going to say too much on that, but I prefer a good story to a bloody mess. That's my opinion. And the first Halloween films had that. If you watch even the first movie, particularly, there is really no blood in it, but they pulled off a great horror film. It's the Undertaker helping him out there with the headstone. And there's something to be said for poseability on these figures. I would not have a problem getting a 1/6 scale figure on their knees, but if you look at this figure, I had to practically break his back to get him to stay on his knees, and he's still very precarious there. He could slip off any moment and fall forward because of how badly his hips are jointed. But I wouldn't have that much trouble with Myers. Anyway, back to the point about the film. You know, that's why Roger Ebert, a famous film critic, had said that it's easy to create violence on the screen, but it's hard to do it well. Like Psycho did it well, The Shining did it well, and the original Halloween did it well. It's a lot easier to just make a gory, bloody, messy film than it is to imply violence. Why don't we switch this out a little bit and see how well it works with the ghost head. As a matter of fact, I'll just go ahead and do it right now so that you can see the transition. Wrists went on really easy. I didn't have too much trouble with the wrists. Changing the hands out. Look, his arm doesn't even want to go down. Changing the hands out was not a problem. They popped right off. See? Real easy transition. Which, oh, Brock Lesnar passed out. Which, with some of these, that's tough, and they don't want to go in. But these hands transitioned very well. There you go. If you have trouble with the wrist joint on your figure, don't force it. Because those pegs break, and to my knowledge, there's no replacements available. Let's go ahead and pull the head off. Wow, that's a long stem. See that? That concerns me a little bit. I don't like the idea of such a long stem. Because the longer it is, the greater the chance of breaking it. Now, if you saw my review of the Daredevil, he has interchangeable heads, and the neck stem was pretty short. That popped on easy enough. And now we have... No, it didn't. It slipped out. Let me try that again. Alright, it's on again. I guess that's why it has the shoulder apparatus. Let's get him up into the stand here. And there's your Mike Myers ghost. His knife fell. Which you could do a really nice diorama of. You know, if you could build a diorama of Myers on the stairs. That would be pretty cool. So what do you think of the Michael Myers Halloween figure? I like this figure, despite the flaws. Like I said, if I was going to have a couple of complaints, the shoulder and elbow articulation is pretty bad. It's very tight. It makes me nervous that I'm going to break something. I don't like the long neck stem. Again, because I'm worried something is going to break. And the pumpkin, see over there, is still flickering, is very difficult to set up. Make sure you have the right tools for it. Get one of those little mini screwdrivers, and remember how I told you to put the batteries in, or else you'll be fighting with this thing quite a bit. And there is an on-off switch. You see the little white lever in there, shuts it off. So if you want to conserve the batteries, or you don't need it flickering all the time, you can just go ahead and shut that off. So again, what do you think? I like the figure, despite the couple of small complaints that I had. But you know, nothing is perfect. I haven't come across one yet where I was just like, yeah, I can't say anything. But it's still a very high quality figure, and I'm glad to have it in my collection. Are you interested in this figure or anything else from the MEZCO 112 collective line, or maybe you collect something else entirely different? You can go ahead and tell me about it in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear what you're interested in, see what other people think. Is this one that you're thinking about getting? This is the first in the series, because the next one coming out in their horror line is the Evil Dead 2 Bruce Campbell, you know, old chainsaw hand, ashy slashy, and then Jason is going to be coming out from MEZCO. So those are the three that they have lined up for their horror line. So what do you think of this? Tell me your thoughts in the comment section down below. Please do like the video, give it a thumbs up. Share the video if you can, subscribe if you're new. Check out some of our other videos. I've got a lot of unboxing videos of MEZCO figures and other 1/6 scale figures, as well as statues and vintage figures, and I do a lot more than just reviews on this channel. My wife and I do a lot of things on this channel. So go ahead and take a look at the other videos, or take a look at the playlists. You may find something you like. Don't make me send Myers to your house. So thanks for watching, and I will see you again soon.
What's the boogeyman?
As a matter of fact, it was.